Imagine starting as the lowest rank in one of America's most dangerous criminal organizations, then climbing your way to the very top through violence, cunning, and sheer determination. Today, we're telling the story of Harry "Taco" Bowman, a man who went from a hang-around at a Detroit motorcycle club to becoming the most feared and respected president in Outlaws MC history. This is a tale of ambition, brotherhood, and the dark side of the American dream. The Outlaws Motorcycle Club isn't just any biker gang. It's the oldest outlaw motorcycle club in the world, founded in 1935 in McCook, Illinois. With over 4,000 members across 441 chapters in 43 countries, the Outlaws are considered one of the big four most dangerous motorcycle gangs in America, alongside the Hells Angels, Banditos, and Pagans. But what does it really take to rise from the bottom to the top of such an organization? The journey is brutal, requiring absolute loyalty, unwavering commitment, and often a willingness to engage in violence that would shock most people. The Outlaws have a strict hierarchy that mirrors a paramilitary organization. And climbing those ranks isn't just about time served, it's about proving your worth at every level. Today we're examining the extraordinary rise of one man who embodied everything the Outlaws stood for. Harry Joseph Bowman, known as Taco, didn't just become a member, he became a legend. His story reveals the inner workings of how someone can ascend from the lowest level of this criminal empire to its ultimate position of power. From 1984 to 1999, Taco Bowman ruled the Outlaws with an iron fist, transforming them into one of the most feared criminal organizations in North America. The Outlaws hierarchy, understanding the ladder. Before we dive into Taco Bowman's remarkable ascent, you need to understand exactly what he was climbing. The Outlaws operate with a rigid hierarchy that every member must navigate, and each level comes with its own challenges, tests, and requirements. At the bottom, you have the hang-around. This isn't even an official position. You're essentially a guest who's allowed to spend time with club members. Hang-arounds have no rank, no official status, and no voice in club matters. They're being observed, evaluated, and tested to see if they might have what it takes to move up. This stage can last anywhere from several months to years, depending on how the members perceive your dedication and potential. Next comes prospect status. This is where the real work begins. A prospect must be sponsored by a full patch member who becomes personally responsible for their actions. Prospects wear a vest with the club name but not the full logo, and they're essentially servants to the full patch members. They watch over bikes during meetings, clean motorcycles, run errands, and endure whatever hazing the members decide to dish out. According to law enforcement sources, this can range from humiliating pranks to criminal activities designed to test loyalty. The third stage is probationary or probate status. Probates wear a mandatory patch reading "Probationary Outlaws" and must demonstrate their absolute commitment to the club. They're deeper into the organization's activities, but still under constant scrutiny. The probationary period typically lasts several months, during which any full patch member can voice concerns about their suitability. Finally, there's full patch member status, the coveted patched position. This requires a unanimous vote from all chapter members, and it's here that a member can finally wear the complete Outlaws colors, the skull and cross pistons logo, known as Charlie. Full patch members attend weekly church meetings where club business is conducted, and they have voting rights in chapter decisions. But even within the full patch ranks, there's another hierarchy. Local chapters have presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, treasurers, sergeants at arms, and road captains. Above them are regional leaders, and at the very top sits the international president, the ultimate authority over the entire global organization. This pyramid structure means that someone like Taco Bowman had to prove himself not just once, but repeatedly at every level. Each promotion required the respect of his peers, demonstration of leadership abilities, and often a willingness to engage in the violent activities that law enforcement says are central to the club's operations. Early days, the making of Taco. Harry Joseph Bowman was born in the late 1940s and raised in St. Clair Township, Michigan. Unlike the stereotypical image of an outlaw biker, Bowman came from a middle-class background and attended Port Huron Catholic High School. His early life gave no indication that he would become one of the most notorious motorcycle gang leaders in American history. Bowman's entry into the outlaw motorcycle world began in Detroit during the early 1970s, when the city was experiencing massive economic upheaval. The decline of the automotive industry created a perfect storm of unemployment, urban decay, and opportunity for alternative economic activities. It was in this environment that a young Harry Bowman first encountered the Detroit chapter of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. The nickname Taco came from his physical appearance. Despite being Caucasian, Bowman's dark complexion and features led club members to think he looked Hispanic. In the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, where nicknames often stick for life, Taco became his identity within the brotherhood. Philip Reich of the Detroit Police Department's motorcycle gang unit, who first encountered Bowman in 1980, described him as a very interesting, bright guy with remarkable leadership abilities. Reich noted that Bowman initially lived in the Outlaws clubhouse on Detroit's east side, but frequently hung out at a topless bar called the Please Station on 7 Mile Road, just west of Van Dyke. What set Bowman apart from other prospects wasn't just his intelligence, but his ability to navigate between two worlds. While he could play the part of a hardcore outlaw biker, he was equally comfortable in a business suit negotiating with Detroit's Italian-American organized crime families. This adaptability would prove crucial to his rise within the organization. According to law enforcement sources, Bowman's early years with the Outlaws were marked by his willingness to take on dangerous assignments and his skill at generating revenue for the club. The Outlaws in Detroit during this period were heavily involved in drug trafficking, particularly methamphetamine production and distribution, as well as controlling topless bars and other adult entertainment venues. Bowman quickly distinguished himself as someone who could handle both the violent and business aspects of the organization. Former Detroit police officer Philip Reich observed that in those early days, a lot of the bikers were agents to the strippers, managing and protecting women who worked in the clubs. This gave Bowman insight into a lucrative revenue stream that would later become central to Outlaws operations under his leadership. By 1970, just a few years after joining as a hangaround, Harry Taco Bowman had achieved something remarkable. He was elected president of the Detroit chapter. This meteoric rise through the ranks was unprecedented in an organization where progression typically took many years. His rapid ascension earned him respect and also created some enemies who felt he had moved too quickly through the traditional hierarchy. The Detroit takeover, proving leadership. Becoming president of the Detroit Outlaws chapter at such a young age was just the beginning of Taco Bowman's remarkable journey. The Detroit chapter wasn't just another Outlaws group. It was one of the most powerful and profitable in the entire organization, controlling significant territory in Michigan and generating substantial revenue through various illegal activities. Under Bowman's leadership, the Detroit Outlaws quickly became the most senior of approximately 35 biker gangs operating in the city. This wasn't achieved through negotiation or peaceful means. It required the kind of violent enforcement that would become Bowman's trademark throughout his career. According to law enforcement sources, the Detroit chapter specialized in drug trafficking, prostitution, extortion, gambling, and bombings. Bowman's success in Detroit caught the attention of the Outlaws' national leadership, particularly Harold Stairway Harry Henderson, who served as the national president and was based in Dayton, Ohio. Henderson recognized Bowman's potential and took him under his wing as a protege. This mentorship was crucial to Bowman's continued rise within the organization. During the 1970s, Bowman's responsibilities expanded beyond just running the Detroit chapter. He was promoted to leader of the club's North region, which included multiple chapters across the Midwest. This regional leadership position put him in direct contact with chapters throughout Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and other northern states. One of Bowman's most significant early achievements was his involvement in the Outlaws' expansion into Canada. In July 1977, he played a crucial role in what became known as the Yankeeization of the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club in Ontario. Members of the Detroit Outlaws, led by Bowman, were invited to provide intimidation at a meeting in Crystal Beach, Ontario, where 8 of the 13 Satan's Choice chapters defected to join the Outlaws. This Canadian expansion was more than just adding new members. It opened up entirely new revenue streams and smuggling routes between the United States and Canada. The geographic advantage of controlling territory on both sides of the border would prove invaluable for drug trafficking and other criminal activities. By the late 1970s, Bowman had achieved another significant promotion. He became the national vice president of the Outlaws, second only to Henderson in the entire organization. This position gave him oversight of operations across multiple regions and direct involvement in strategic planning for the club's future. What made Bowman particularly effective as a leader was his ability to balance the traditional outlaw biker image with sophisticated business operations. He could switch from wearing his colors and riding a Harley to dressed in a three-piece suit for meetings with Italian mobsters in Detroit. This adaptability allowed him to negotiate complex deals and maintain relationships with other criminal organizations, while never losing credibility with his biker brothers. Law enforcement sources indicate that during this period, Bowman lived a double life that reflected his growing power and wealth. While maintaining his image as a hardcore biker leader, he moved his family to a mansion in Grosse Pointe Park, an affluent area east of Detroit. His children attended expensive private schools, and he was often chauffeured in a bulletproof Cadillac, later upgrading to a Rolls-Royce. The presidential campaign, climbing to the top. By the early 1980s, Taco Bowman had positioned himself as the heir apparent to national leadership of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. His mentor, Harold Stairway Harry Henderson, was aging, and questions about succession began circulating throughout the organization. However, reaching the pinnacle of power in the Outlaws wasn't automatic. It required political maneuvering, alliance building, and demonstrating that he could command respect from chapters across the entire organization. The process of becoming international president of the Outlaws is unlike anything in the legitimate business world. It's not just about qualifications or even popularity. It's about proving that you can maintain the organization's violent reputation while expanding its criminal enterprises. Potential leaders must show they can handle both internal disputes and external threats, particularly from rival motorcycle clubs. In February 1984, at a leadership meeting in Joliet, Illinois, Taco Bowman achieved the ultimate goal. He was elected international president of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. This made him the supreme leader of over 4,000 members across dozens of countries, with absolute authority over one of the world's most powerful criminal organizations. One of Bowman's first major decisions was to relocate the club's national headquarters from Chicago to Detroit. This move wasn't just about convenience. It represented a shift in the organization's center of power to Bowman's home territory, where he had spent over a decade building relationships and establishing control systems. Under Bowman's leadership, the Outlaws transformed from a large but somewhat disorganized confederation of local chapters into a truly international criminal enterprise. He implemented more sophisticated communication systems, standardized procedures across chapters, and most importantly, escalated the organization's ongoing war with their primary rival, the Hells Angels. The rivalry between the Outlaws and Hells Angels had existed for decades, but Bowman turned it into something approaching an actual military conflict. He established clear territorial boundaries and made it known that any Hells Angels attempting to establish chapters in Outlaws territory would face violent retaliation. This wasn't just tough talk. Bowman backed up his threats with action. According to federal court documents, Bowman's strategy for dealing with the Hells Angels was brutally simple. Eliminate them wherever they tried to establish a presence in Outlaws territory. This philosophy was summed up in the motto, Adios, an acronym for Angels Die in Outlaw States, which became popular among Outlaws members under Bowman's leadership. Bowman also modernized the Outlaws' criminal operations, moving beyond traditional activities like drug dealing and prostitution to more sophisticated schemes involving money laundering, weapons trafficking, and interstate transportation of stolen goods. His business background and ability to work with other criminal organizations, particularly the Italian-American Mafia in Detroit, opened up new revenue streams that previous Outlaws leaders had never accessed. The financial success of these operations allowed Bowman to live an increasingly lavish lifestyle while maintaining his credibility as an outlaw leader. Federal investigators later estimated that At the height of his power, Bowman was overseeing criminal activities that generated millions of dollars annually for the Outlaws organization. The Reign of Terror, consolidating power. Once Taco Bowman secured his position as international president, he embarked on what law enforcement would later describe as one of the most violent periods in outlaw motorcycle gang history. His presidency, lasting from 1984 to 1999, was marked by systematic brutality designed to establish the Outlaws as the dominant motorcycle club in North America. Bowman's approach to leadership was based on a simple principle: fear and respect were the same thing. He understood that in the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, any sign of weakness would be exploited by rivals or ambitious subordinates. Therefore, his response to any challenge was swift and overwhelmingly violent. One of Bowman's most notorious early actions as president occurred in 1991 with the murder of Raymond Bear Chaffin, a former Outlaws member in Florida who had left the gang and joined the rival Warlocks. Rather than simply expelling Chaffin or ignoring his defection, Bowman ordered his execution as a message to any other members considering leading the organization. The contract was given to Wayne "Joe Black" Hicks, whom Bowman had appointed as president of the crucial Fort Lauderdale chapter. On February 21, 1991, club enforcers Houston, part-time Tex Murphy, and Alex Dirt Anchorage shot Chaffin to death, establishing the precedent that leaving the Outlaws could be a death sentence. The following year, during Bike Week in Daytona Beach in March 1992, Bowman personally orchestrated one of the most shocking displays of internal discipline in motorcycle club history. Erwin Hitler Nissen, a club probate who had gotten into a physical altercation with Atlanta Outlaws, chapter president James Moose McLean, was subjected to brutal punishment that went far beyond typical club discipline. Nissen was brought to Bowman's motel room, where he was assaulted, threatened with a knife, and warned that he would be killed if he ever struck an Outlaws officer again. The session included Bowman himself, along with Houston Murphy, Dennis "Dog" Hall, and Christopher Mayall. The violence escalated when Murphy pushed Nissen off a 3-story balcony, causing severe injuries that required extensive medical treatment. This incident demonstrated several key aspects of Bowman's leadership style. First, he was willing to personally participate in violent acts rather than simply ordering them. Second, he ensured that multiple witnesses were present, so word of the punishment would spread throughout the organization. Third, the severity of the punishment far exceeded the original offense, sending a clear message about the consequences of disrespecting the club hierarchy. Bowman's most audacious move came on New Year's Eve 1993, when he held a meeting of top outlaw leaders in a Florida hotel suite and formally declared his intent to escalate the club's war against the Hells Angels. This wasn't just an increase in rhetoric. It was a strategic decision to engage in systematic violence against their primary rivals. The escalation began in earnest in early 1994 when Bowman visited Chicago and ordered local chapter president Peter "Greased Lightning Pete" Rogers to begin plotting attacks on Hells Angels-affiliated groups in the area. The Outlaws had learned that the Hells Henchmen, a motorcycle gang with chapters in and around Chicago, had begun prospecting for the Hells Angels after holding meetings with Angels representatives in Indiana. On June 26, 1994, Bowman personally attended the Summer Madness motorcycle rally at the Ileana Motor Speedway in Schererville, where he gave direct orders to attack members of the Invaders biker gang, whom the Outlaws suspected of being affiliated with the Hells Angels. The night before the rally, Bowman met with attending Outlaws leaders, including Gary chapter president Randy "Mad" Yeager, and explicitly ordered them to assault Invaders members the following day. The resulting violence shocked even experienced law enforcement officers. Multiple Invaders members were severely beaten with various weapons in front of hundreds of witnesses, demonstrating Bowman's willingness to engage in public violence regardless of the consequences. The FBI's most wanted when power becomes peril. Taco. Bowman's reign of terror couldn't continue indefinitely without attracting serious federal attention. By the mid-1990s, law enforcement agencies across multiple states were coordinating efforts to build cases against the Outlaws' leadership, with Bowman as their primary target. The investigation intensified, following a series of bombings and murders that federal authorities directly linked to Bowman's orders. In late 1993, the Outlaws began systematic attacks on gangs affiliated with the Hells Angels, including the devastating bombing of the Hells Henchmen Clubhouse in Rockford by Kevin Spike O'Neill's Booze Runners, who were seeking to become an Outlaws chapter. The bombing injured 3 police officers who were attempting to safely detonate the device, creating a public relations nightmare that brought unwanted federal scrutiny. Despite the danger, Bowman approved the Booze Runners' promotion to full Outlaws chapter status, sending a clear message that violence against rivals would be rewarded rather than punished. Federal investigators began using sophisticated surveillance techniques, including wiretaps and undercover operations, to document Bowman's role in coordinating violence across multiple states. They discovered that, despite his public persona as a local club president, Bowman was actually operating a criminal enterprise that spanned international borders and generated millions of dollars in illegal revenue. In 1992, the FBI took the unusual step of warning Bowman that Detroit mobsters had put a contract out on his life. Federal agents met with him in a parking lot on Detroit's east side to inform him of the murder plot, which they had discovered through wiretaps on 2 mafia enforcers who discussed killing Bowman as they drove by his home. This bizarre situation of federal agents protecting a criminal they were investigating highlighted Bowman's significance in the underworld hierarchy. The noose began tightening in August 1997 when federal authorities returned indictments charging Bowman with racketeering, murder, and conspiracy charges related to his leadership of the Outlaws. The indictments were based on years of investigation and included testimony from multiple cooperating witnesses who provided detailed accounts of Bowman's criminal activities. Realizing that his arrest was imminent, Bowman made the decision that would define the final chapter of his criminal career. He went into hiding. Using the extensive network of Outlaws chapters across North America, Bowman disappeared into a series of safe houses, aided by loyal club members and his contacts in the Detroit Mafia. On March 14, 1998, Taco Bowman achieved a dubious distinction when he was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, becoming the 453rd person to receive this designation. Federal authorities offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to his arrest, and his photo was displayed in post offices throughout the United States. The FBI's wanted poster described Bowman as armed and extremely dangerous, noting his aliases and warning that he should not be approached by civilians. His inclusion on the most wanted list generated significant media attention, including profiles on America's Most Wanted and coverage in major newspapers across the country. For 15 months, Bowman successfully evaded capture, moving between safe houses across the country with the aid of various Outlaws chapters. During this time, he was deputized as international president by James Big Frank Wheeler of the Indianapolis chapter, allowing him to continue directing the organization's activities even while in hiding. The manhunt for Bowman involved multiple federal agencies and consumed significant resources, but his knowledge of law enforcement techniques and the loyalty of Outlaws members made him extremely difficult to locate. Federal investigators later estimated that dozens of club members provided assistance during his time as a fugitive, demonstrating the depth of loyalty he had built during his years of leadership. The fall. From president to prisoner, Taco Bowman's remarkable run as both Outlaws president and FBI fugitive came to an end on June 7, 1999, in Sterling Heights, Michigan. Ironically, the man who had built his empire on loyalty and brotherhood was brought down by someone close to him. One of his girlfriends provided the tip that led to his arrest. Federal agents surrounded Bowman in a quiet suburban location, ending one of the longest and most intensive manhunts in FBI history. His capture marked the conclusion of an extraordinary criminal career that had spanned over 2 decades and transformed the Outlaws from a regional motorcycle club into an international criminal enterprise. Bowman's trial revealed the full scope of his criminal activities and the violent culture he had created within the Outlaws. Federal prosecutors presented evidence of murders, bombings, drug trafficking, and racketeering that painted a picture of an organization that operated more like a military unit than a motorcycle club. On March 3, 2019, Harry Taco Bowman died in federal custody at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, after a long battle with cancer. He was 69 years old and had spent the final 20 years of his life behind bars, never again experiencing the freedom and power that had defined his rise through the Outlaws' hierarchy. Bowman's legacy within the outlaw motorcycle world remains complex. To law enforcement, he was a violent criminal who caused immeasurable harm to communities across North America. To many in the motorcycle club community, he represented the ultimate embodiment of the outlaw spirit, someone who lived by his own rules and never compromised his principles, even when facing life imprisonment. His journey from hang-around to international president stands as perhaps the most remarkable rise to power in outlaw motorcycle gang history. Through intelligence, brutality, and unwavering determination, Harry Taco Bowman proved that in the world of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, anything was possible for someone willing to pay the ultimate price.